Well, hello there. For any of you that already know me, great big hi there and a hello. For any of you that don't know me, my name is Eric. Today is going to be just a little bit longer than what my videos will be in the future. Reason for that is I think it's only appropriate that I introduce myself just a little bit. So please welcome yourself to the first episode of Tasting My Memories. We'll get into that namesake in a minute. So I am not a chef at all. I actually sell real estate by trade, but cooking has been a huge part of my life. It's been a big passion of mine, and for years I've had many of my friends ask me for a lot of the recipes that I use on a pretty regular basis. So that is why we're here today. So what I'm actually going to be going into today is very, very simple. It's a linguine and a white wine garlic sauce. As you can see, I am not in some unbelievable kitchen. I'm actually in my own home. And I really wanted to convey that to you because you do not need this amazing, expansive kitchen to do any of these recipes. My house is a very classic 1930s ranch. Does not have a lot of room. Kitchens typically at that time were not even built to entertain in, but as we all know, anybody who has people over, has parties, does any kind of entertaining, everyone always ends up in the kitchen. I don't have one that is really built for that. So, without further ado, we're going to get on with this. Like I said, we're going to be doing a linguine and a white wine garlic sauce. It's a very simple recipe, so let's get on with the show, and by the end of this, hopefully I will be completely covered in flour. Not sure why I thought black would be a good idea. So, what we're going to do is, first of all, get an oversized bowl because you're going to be rolling around in this a lot. I try my best to use minimal mechanisms, so I really don't use anything of mixers. Everything is by hand with the exception of my pasta press. If you do not have a pasta press, halfway through this, I'm also going to be showing you how to do this recipe with just a rolling pin and a knife. If you don't have a rolling pin, a wine bottle always works beautifully for something like this. And don't tell me you don't have a wine bottle around. We're all locked in our houses right now. So as I'm doing these recipes, I'm going to be giving you the measurements for everything, but what you're going to see me do is actually the recipes in half formation. The reason for that is I don't think any of you really want to stare at my face for too long while we're waiting 30 minutes for the dough to chill, so I already have the other half of the recipe done. Usually, for something like this, I would use 1 cup of semolina flour and 1 cup of 00 flour. Many of the grocery stores right now are in a great shortage of things, so it's very hard for me to find every ingredient that I need. So for today, I'm actually just using a regular all-purpose flour. There's nothing wrong with that at all. So you are going to get a heaping cup of that. Yep, starting to turn white already. Go ahead, throw that in. By the way, I am a one-man show on this. I am a one-camera show on this, so unfortunately I can't show you a lot of things that are very in-depth, but hopefully at the very least I'll entertain you a little bit. Try my best. So once the flour's in the bowl, go ahead and just press it around a little bit, and you're going to try and create just a little bit of a well in the center of it. The reason for that is because in a minute we're going to put the eggs in, and you're going to want something that actually captures them when you go to do the egg beating. So can't really show you too much of it, but it is laid out there and it does have a well in it. So like I said, usually it's 2 cups. Right now I'm just doing 1. So for me doing the half recipes, what we're going to do is we are going to do 1 whole egg going into this. Please be careful of shells. That is the worst nightmare, especially when you're dealing with flour because you can't really see it. Then you're going to do 1 egg yolk in this. Now, when this is its full recipe, you're going to do 2 whole eggs and 2 egg yolks. Bam! Get that out of here. Nobody likes egg yolk on their hands. It's kind of not the nicest feeling in the world. So from here, we're going to go ahead and I'm actually just going to do a 2-finger swirl around this, and we're going to go ahead and start breaking the yolks apart. Yeah. Go ahead and give it a little bit of a mix in. From here, we're going to go ahead and we're going to add a little bit of salt. If salt is not a part of your diet, this is not an integral part of the pasta, but it does add a little bit of something to it, just a nice little kick. So you're just going to do probably right around a tablespoon. Yeah, we'll go ahead and call it a tablespoon. If salt is in your diet, everyone tends to like it. I know I do. It's probably why I'm getting fat. What you're also going to add into there is about 25 milliliters of water, so just a little under a quarter of a cup. Go ahead and just start folding this around, and you're going to see that it starts taking a little bit of shape, but it's snowing a little bit with it. But then as you move it around and around, it's going to start taking on the nice yellow color of the eggs. Nothing is like farm fresh eggs if you're able to get them though. Farm fresh are going to be a little bit more along the orange color, and you definitely will taste the difference. But again, we are in a shortage of a lot of things right now, so not everything can be accessed. So that only took me maybe about a minute, minute and a half. And it is stuck all over me, but we already are in dough formation. From this, go ahead, grab a little bit more flour. Flour is going to be your friend with all of this, and you're actually just going to put it on your hands. The reason for that is when it's on your hands, it starts to separate the mixture away from your fingers and starts forming back onto the ball. Once you start pulling that apart, you should have a nicely floured ball. And it'll look something like this. You're going to want to knead it around a little bit more, maybe 3 to 5 minutes. And then at that time, go ahead and get a plastic wrap, just enough that it will encompass the whole thing. Put it into the plastic wrap, tighten it up, and go ahead and throw that in the refrigerator. You want to put it in there for probably about 30 minutes or so, 30 to 40, because it's going to start to sweat. You want it to do that so it starts forming an elasticity, like this one. So what I have here is already a completed dough ball, because I just don't think you really want to stand around with me and wait for that. We're not going to have that much to talk about. So I have this, and it has a little bit of springiness to it. You'll see that once you do this recipe, it starts coming back to you. So we're going to take that out. It only takes about a minute for it to start activating with the air in the room. So pardon me while I just get the dough off my hands. Like I said, one camera, one man show. Oh, by the way, if you happen to hear a little pitter patter that goes around the house every now and again, that would be my four-legged sous chef, Maddox. He just kind of walks in and out whenever he feels like it. And though I love having a tile floor in a kitchen, it definitely creates some noise. So we are going to move on from this, and do not wash out your bowl that you went ahead and mixed the dough in. You want a nice floured bowl because in a little while, you're actually going to need that once again, especially because almost every layer of this you're going to have to reflour because it does, like I said, have moisture to it. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to take a knife and we're going to go ahead and cut just about 2 inches off. And on your own, go ahead, just give it a flat press. And already sticking to my hand, so go ahead and flour this. Promised my friend Blair that I would do my best to try and do one of her favorite memes with flour, so now that this is all flattened out, we're going to go ahead and we're going to put our pasta press on the widest setting. My personal press goes from 7 down to 0. So I'm going to move this to the 7th setting, and it's going to have the widest of the openings. The reason that you wanted to go ahead and flatten this out is because you're going to press it through. If you don't do a little bit of pressing with your hands first, you're going to have this dough formation that goes all over the place, and it's just a mess. So, and you don't really have to take your time with this either. Just go ahead, crank it right out, and pull. Already you're going to have something that looks like this. It's a little bit longer. We are nowhere near done with this though, because if you were to go and boil this right now, it would pretty much come out as a brick. Right now the dough feels pretty good, so I'm actually not going to flour it on this round. We probably will have to on the next one. Like I said, my press goes from 7 down to 0. do not skip numbers on that. It will, once again, try to, kind of implode itself, and that's usually when you end up with holes in the dough. So let's just keep running it through. Like I said, this doesn't have to be a slow process. I'd also like to mention that, see, this already needs a little bit of flour on it. I'd like to mention that, so many of us are locked at home right now with limited things to do. And so many of you are at home with your children trying to figure out what to do. Pasta is an incredible thing that really can be family involved. And if your kids are screaming and driving you nuts, this might actually be a pretty good solution of something to do right now. I was talking to a friend of mine the other day, hey Brittany, and she has a toddler as well as an infant. And she's going a little bit crazy being at home, as a lot of mothers are. My friend Nicole said the same thing. And I said to them, you do realize at the end of the day, pasta dough really is nothing more than edible Play-Doh. Don't eat it raw, it's not the nicest taste, but it is edible Play-Doh. And as the rule goes with dough, the more that you beat it around and you knead it around, the better it's going to be. So go ahead and give your kids a little slab of pasta dough. You can just go ahead and cut off a piece, roll it into a ball, put a little bit of flour on the table, and tell them to go ahead and beat it around. It is not going to hurt it at all. What's also not going to hurt it is adding a little bit of food coloring into it. And from talking to my friends with children about this, they said to me, oh my God, what a great idea. If your child's favorite color is purple, go ahead and put the food coloring in it. Will not hurt the dough once again. And how cool is it going to be that, or how cool will your child think that you are, that not only did you give them something to play around with all day, but then once dinner time rolls around, that you also have given them, let's say their favorite color is purple pasta for dinner. You are going to be the superhero, and you might actually get a quiet kid for a little while. So I went ahead and I did another pass through this while I was rambling on and on. That's about what you can expect from me. But we are going to go ahead and move this setting again. This is how quick it's going. I'm already on setting 4, started out at 7. So we are almost through with this. Now with linguine, I actually choose not to go down to 0. Sometimes, just depending on how the dough comes out, I may not even go down to 1. The reason for that is when it comes to linguine, you want the heft that goes along with it. You want to have that feeling of a thicker pasta. So I don't like it to be too translucent. Pardon me while I wash my hands, I did just touch my face. Alrighty, so getting back onto this. What we started out with, it's already, starting to take a pretty good shape, starting to elongate. At this time, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to put the water on so that that can start to boil for when it's actually time for us to get the pasta on the stove. I don't know why I have a favorite burner. I also don't know why the diagram's right there. I can never quite remember which one to turn on because I just turned on the back one by accident. What I'm going to do right now is we are going to finish this roll of pasta, otherwise we are never going to get to eating it. Still actually feeling pretty good, so no need to flour at the moment. Right now we've gotten down to 2, and that is actually where I'm going to stop with this one. It's feeling pretty good. So there we have it, first sheet of this. I actually did a recipe similar to this about a year ago with my cousin Mike. And first of all, this is just an all-around fun family thing. Also, so many people can't go to restaurants right now. This makes for an amazing date night as well. Go ahead and have fun with it, throw a little bit of flour at each other, you'll have a ball. But I had made this with my cousin Mike, and he is far taller than me. I'm only 5'7", he's over 6 feet. And I said to him, at a certain point, you have to cut this. And he said, no, I want to see what we can do with this. And we ended up with about a 6-foot long strip of pasta before we cut it down. So you can keep going, you can have a lot of fun with this. So we are now at the point with this that it is all pressed out. It is, for the most part, pretty translucent. You can see through it. If I had gone any more, it would be like a window pane. So from here, what I'm going to do is I'm going to move the mechanism, or the crank, over to the Linguine setting on this. And what we're going to do is we're going to flour this one more time, just so that it doesn't stick to anything. And by the way, if you do end up buying a pasta press, please do not ever put it in the wash. It will rust out, and then there goes your pasta press, and there goes your money down the drain. The best way to actually clean it is the first strip of pasta that you put through this. And this goes for the flattening side of this, as well as the linguine or spaghetti side. What you're going to want to do is run your first one through it. That will go ahead and pull all of the dry bits out, and you'll be able to move right on. And that is, in essence, just what it takes to clean these. So, okay, we are all floured, ready to go. It doesn't have to be perfect. Please don't try and replicate something that you've seen on TV. Have fun with this. If you make a mistake, you make a mistake. If you end up with holes in your pasta, go ahead and run it through a second time. All you have to do is fold it in half and run it back through on that setting again. Guarantee you the hole will fill. Well, can't guarantee it, but it should at least minimize it. But don't worry about it, because at the end of this, all that matters is how it tastes and that you're having a great time with family, friends, whoever you are with. So we're going to go ahead, start rolling this through. And at the end of it, beautiful, beautiful linguine strands. So I had said to you earlier to not wash out your bowl that you went ahead and did the mixing in. The reason for that is once this is all setting, the last thing that you want to do is just leave it as it is. Once it gets exposed to the air and the moisture, you're going to end up with something that gets stuck together unless you flour it at this point. What you can also do is buy a pasta tree. I have one myself. Sometimes I like to use it, sometimes I do not. I myself cook in such large quantities that my pasta tree tends to be as full as can be. So there goes our first one. Now, as I said to you before, not everyone has a pasta press, not everyone has a huge kitchen. So work with what you have. So I took earlier, small slab of dough, and what we're going to do is we are now going to use a rolling pin. Like I said, if you have a wine bottle, use a wine bottle. My personal preference on a rolling pin is a French pin. It is no handle, and always remember to flour your rolling pin. Reason for that is just like with my hands, just like with the press, everything tends to stick. So go ahead and get it floured and just start rolling the pasta out. Sometimes it can actually go a little bit faster than doing this on the pasta press, but go ahead and roll it out. Already I'm starting to see it sticking to the rolling pin, so we're going to go ahead and I've got enough on the cutting board right now for me to just flour it in the backside already. It's looking good, and we're just going to keep going. But yes, sometimes this does go faster than doing this on this because you have so much more control. The reason that I like a French rolling pin is I just feel like it has so much more give to it than one that has handles to it, especially when you're doing something like pasta, because your result is something that ends up stretching out. So I tend to like something that I have a little more control over, and what I mean by that is I'm actually able to roll my arms down this and apply a little more pressure. So I just find that it's a little bit more forgiving. So we already are looking pretty good. Now this one, I actually had cut this a little bit smaller than the first dough that I had rolled out. So this one is not going to come out quite as big as that one did. So we're just going to keep flattening. And it probably only needs one more time through, one going side to side, and then one going with the length of this. This recipe is just so simple and so easy, and you know, to me, cooking is just such a passion and makes me think of family so much because this is what I grew up with. And every Christmas when I go home, my mother and I actually crank out, hi Mom, about 6 months worth of linguine together. It does freeze very well, but what we do is, and I'm sure many of you either have this or grew up with it, my mother loves to hang dry her clothes. So she has this stand-up rack, you know, it looks like cross hatches down the side of it. And what we do is we actually wrap the spindles of that with saran paper or saran wrap. And then from there, we lay the pasta out on it. It works so much better than a pasta tree. And when you're cooking in such large quantities, you really do want to have that extra space. So we are looking pretty good. Like I said, you know, see if you can see through it. It's got a little bit of translucency. From here, what we're going to do is we are going to do really, really gentle folds. Do not do creases. Oop, that came undone. Do not do creases. It's going to stick together. It's not going to give you what you actually want when you're doing this by hand. So I have a very, very loose fold going on with this. Kind of looks like a crepe. So what I'm going to do is take your knife, hold it right at the base, and just go ahead and just make your cuts. Just, you know, judge it based on what you think actually is going to be right. There is no science to any of this. There's also nothing quite like the way a good knife cuts for you. So you're going to get a few, like this one that went ahead and pulled away. The reason for that is, though we floured each side of this, the insides where you're cutting are not floured. So you're going to get a few that have a little bit of a stickiness to them. So as we are coming to the end of this, and like I said, judge by yourself the size that you actually want to do. There is no right way, no wrong way to do any of this. But now that this is all cut, we're going to go ahead and do another sprinkle across this and start to just kind of fold the flour around. And as you do that, take one or two, start pulling them apart. And just like that, you have all of your linguine done without a pasta press. So we're going to get that unfolded. We're going to see how the water is doing. We're starting to get small bubble accumulation in there. So at this time, we're going to go ahead and we are going to salt the water. This is really your time to season the pasta, and you want to get this into the water, not when it first goes in the pot, and not when it's at a full boil. You want to give it the time for that seasoning of the salt to come up with it. So what I'm also going to do is I'm going to add just a little bit of olive oil into the pasta water. Reason for that is you do not want the pasta to stick to each other because it will kind of start to clump. So we're going to do just right around, I'd say, 2 tablespoons of that. Now from here, we're actually going to move away from the pasta for a second, and we are going to work on our sauce that actually goes on this. This one is one of my favorites. It's very simple. It's a white wine garlic sauce that I also put green peas into it. So what we're going to do first is we're actually going to take 1 1/4 cups of white wine. I use a Sauvignon Blanc. I actually use a boxed wine. Good and cheap and has a nice aroma to it, and hey, life is too short to throw away expensive wine. Not that you're really throwing it away, but I think you know what I mean. So we've gone ahead and we've gotten that on the stove. So let's see if I get the right burner this time. Score! So that's not going to take all that long for it to come up. So what we have here is I have right around 1/4 cup of minced garlic. Please don't buy bagged garlic. It goes bad so fast. I know it's so much easier with it already being peeled, but it goes bad faster. You'll find one that are translucent and the smell of it is just awful. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to take just about half of the garlic And we're going to go ahead and we're going to put that into the wine. What we're also going to do is we're going to take 3 tablespoons of butter. Put that in there and let that melt. Our water for our pasta is starting to come up a little bit more. And that butter's actually going to melt into that wine sauce pretty quick. Now, I only used half of the garlic. You are going to use everything that was chopped, but what I like to do is go ahead and put olive oil over the other half of that. This flavors the oil, this flavors the garlic, and from here, while you're cooking everything else, we're going to go ahead and throw it in the refrigerator. The cold air kind of intensifies the flavor. Feel free to modify the garlic, put more in there, put less in there. This is quite a bit. I'm a pretty big garlic fan. My mother used to, actually still does, tell people that when I was in school, she dreaded waking me up in the morning. And the reason for that is, as soon as she would open my bedroom door, the smell of garlic would just waft out. It was pretty much coming out of my pores. Really hasn't changed much. It's still about the same for me. So we've got that in the refrigerator. Butter is melting and the wine is already starting to come to a little bit of a boil. So from here, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my good friend Mr. Wooden Spoon and just kind of move that around because the bubbles tend to be in one spot right now. And that should not actually take too much longer for that to come up. So while we're waiting for that, I'm just going to go ahead and cut off another piece so that we can go ahead and get some more pasta rolled out for this. And I'll go ahead and talk about the namesake of this show, Tasting My Memories. Not necessarily needing a name, I could just tell you I'm Eric and I like to cook. But I went back and forth with it. I thought about going with As the Pasta Cranks, Turning My Crank, Watch Me Dough, just all over the place with it. And nothing really fit. And I'm very big on talking about these recipes and talking about how they are in my family. And, you know, like I said, going home at Christmas and being able to do this with my mother and laying all of it out. And this past Christmas, my niece was there, and she was right around 1.5 at the time, just turned 2 last month. Happy belated birthday, Luciana. Uncle loves you. And see, I already made a mistake because I did not put this back to its first setting. That's okay. Mistakes happen. Just go ahead, ball the dough back together. We are getting a little ahead of ourselves, so I'm going to turn these all down to a little bit of a simmer. Anyway, my niece was there, and we were pressing out the pasta. So my brother went ahead and held her up to the island, and she got on the crank herself. And it's so important to me that these traditions carry on, and that people who are sometimes afraid to partake in something like this because they think that it's a little more than they can handle, it's really not. It's as easy as can be. And you know, right now with us all being in our houses and not being able to go out many places, it's a wonderful therapeutic thing, or at least that's how I look at it. But I really love to cook. It's also something that is very different for a lot of people for their dinner nights. Fresh pasta, there is nothing like it in the world. I've had the fresh pastas that are ready-made that are in the grocery store, and yes, they absolutely are better than a dried pasta that you buy out of a box, but there is still no comparison. And in a few weeks, we're actually going to do an episode. I have a number of friends that, as well as family members, that have gluten intolerances. And I have, over the years, played around with a lot of different gluten-free flours, and I've actually found just the right mixture for it. So don't think that this is something that you wouldn't be able to do should you have any kind of intolerance or preference. All right. So now we're back on track. Really, folks, I mean, don't be afraid to make a mistake. It's cooking. Anything can be fixed. You oversalt the water. Go ahead and throw the water out, start over again. You rip the pasta. Go ahead and repress it again. I already have a hole forming in here. It's not a big enough one for me to really worry about it. So we're just going to keep on going. And just like that, we are already at our last setting. Once again, we're going to move the handle over and we're going to crank this through on the linguine side. Some of you out there are going, he either talks too much or he doesn't talk enough, or God, what a weird voice he has. Yeah, I know. It's not great. So we're going to go ahead, like I said, always add a little bit of flour into the bowl so that it does not stick. And for this, I'm not going to cut all of the pasta right now. You know, I don't think that we all want to be here for an hour watching me do that. Who knows? Maybe you do. Maybe you're like me and you don't have a whole lot going on today. So, right there, just from what we cut. So we cut not even half of the dough. Still have this one left. And I would say that this is enough for, just depending on your portion sizes, this is enough for 1 to 2 people just on its own right now. Let me tell you, you are going to want to make more than this. This is just such a simple recipe, and it really has become such a family favorite. One of my other nephews, or one of my nephews, I have 4 nephews and a niece. Have to count. With the exception of one of them, 3 of them were all born within 6 months of each other. It's a lot of fun. It actually is. I love all of them very much. But one of my nephews, who, you know, a lot of children are finicky eaters, and he's right around 4 years old now. My cousin, his father, had said to me, you know, I don't know if he's going to eat it. He may not try new foods. He sat right down and he started eating it, and they actually could not stop him. So this is something that does go over very well. All right, we are looking very good. So I always smell the sauce because when it first goes in, that wine smell is so strong, but it's already dissipated. It's looking really good. So I just want to show you one other thing that's going to be going into this is green peas. I personally am a big fan of them. When I was growing up, I really did not eat them. As I've gotten older, I've gotten to love them very much. They have a lot of meatiness to them. They're very hearty. They're also a very good source of protein. So this is going to be going in there as well. Why I'm making such a mention of this, though, is the one thing that I do not do is put the peas directly into the sauce. The reason for that is they will start to take color or change color, and they'll kind of take on the color of the oil and form like a light green color. If any of you have ever bought canned processed peas, you know what that color looks like. I also feel like they lose a little bit of that hardiness to them once they go into the sauce. So I'll actually just go ahead and throw those on top of the pasta once we serve it in the bowl. So for now, we're looking good on that, and I'm going to go ahead and throw the pasta into the water. I think we're at a good enough point to get that done. And just put it right in. Now this will not cook very long at all. What is going to happen is the boiling is going to slow down because of course you're putting in something that's not as hot as the water, so it's going to slow down. But once that boiling comes back, the pasta will start floating to the top, and you're probably only going to have it in the pot, I'd say about 3 to 4 minutes. So at this time, we're just kind of waiting for that to come around. I'm just going to move a couple things out of the way. And this is what we'll be throwing the pasta into once it's completed. I have been making this recipe for many, many years, and every time I have any kind of party or I go to a party and I get asked if I can bring something, this is one of the recipes that I do get asked for the most. I think that at one point in my life, I actually was eating this 3 times a week. That was when I first started with my new pasta press, because it's like a kid in a candy store when I get a new one. I have 3 of them myself right now. Each one does something a little bit different, even though you would think that they're just all the same thing. But, yep, and not that you'll be able to see him, but that pitter patter you heard was my sous chef Maddox coming through. So he actually probably heard me say the word peas. It's one of his favorite things, and very excited about that. He'll end up with those a little later on. Not going to feed him while I'm trying to feed you guys. All right, so the pasta has started coming to the surface. I'm gonna go ahead and just give it a quick little toss around. Though I put the olive oil in it, you do sometimes still get ones that maybe had not been floured as much, so they do stick together. So I like to just push it around a little bit, make sure that you don't get a lot of clumping. Once this comes out of the pot, what you're also going to see is most people, when they buy, whether it's the fresh pastas that are from the store or you buy a box of pasta, you get these perfect straight lines. That is not the case with fresh pasta. That's not the way that it should be at all. You want something that has imperfections to it. Cooking really should be about what you want to do and how you want your food to taste and how you want it to look. How it looks should be at the bottom of the list. It should be all about how it tastes. So I'm not here to do this incredible presentation, you know, with the, you know, kale stuck in the corner of the plate. That's not happening here. All right, so right now I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to turn the white wine sauce off, and I think we maybe need about 30 more seconds on this pasta. I had the water on medium, so it was not going as fast as I thought it was. Again, I make mistakes. And I think we are just about ready. I can't emphasize this enough. Do not drain your pasta. You want that pasta water. You want it to cling to that. You want a little bit of that in the bowl. Think of it as almost like a gravy that goes on it. It just adds a little bit something, that gorgeous taste of the salted water. There's nothing else like it. So we're going to go ahead. We're going to throw that off. Give it a quick little toss around. And you're just going to go ahead and hold it up. Drain the water out. You don't want a soup after all. And we're almost there. They will get stuck in the pasta hole. And there we have it. So that's out. So next thing that I'm going to do is, if you remember earlier, what I did is I had the other half of the garlic put into the olive oil. So I'm going to take that now, and I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to throw that directly into the pasta while it's hot. But before I do that, I want to go ahead and show you, this is what the noodles will look like. They're not perfectly straight. They curve, they twist. That's all right. After all, it's all about what it tastes like. We did pretty good on that one. Probably needed a little more salt added to it. Anyway, we're going to go ahead and throw this in. And what's going to happen is, since the oil was chilled, as soon as it hits the hot pasta, it's going to be like melting butter in there, like butter. Give it a quick toss around. And then we're going to go ahead, and usually I would pour the whole thing in here. I'm not going to do that because I did not make the full amount of pasta. And when you first look at this, you're going to think, oh, you know, I probably needed to make more sauce. With this white wine sauce, a little bit goes a very long way. So we're just going to give that a toss around. And we're going to go ahead. We're just going to take a handful of the peas and we're going to throw it in there. And that is it. So you can add 2 things to this after the fact if you like to. I have friends that like it without, I have friends that like it with. The first thing is you can go ahead and do a Parmesan cheese in there. A lot of people do that for Italian cooking. Myself personally, for this particular dish, I prefer not to. I like the flavor of the salty pasta as well as the tanginess of the white wine sauce to come out. The other thing that you can add is crushed red pepper. That does add a little bit of heat to it and sets it off. But overall, you really can't go wrong with this. It's as simple as can be. It's family friendly. And we're done. Wish I had a better camera to show you more angles, but that's all we have. So I appreciate any of you that will be watching this for taking the time to just see something very simple that I have a big passion for. And I'm hoping that there's a chance that you yourself may have learned something today as well. Please like, comment, share, subscribe. Cooking my memories truly is my passion, and I cannot wait to show you more. In the coming weeks, we will be doing gluten-free pasta. We will be doing lasagna al forno, one of my favorite recipes. We will also be doing eggplant parmigiana, which is something that I grew up with that we would take onto the beach with us. Fun story to go with that. I'll get into that another time. Thank you all so much for being here with me, and I really hope that I have shown you a little something that maybe you did not know that you could do. Thank you.